Okay, welcome to this presentation and reading of my book Unfollow. You're probably wondering, who's this person? Why is this person talking at me? Well, my name is Lukas Jüliger. I'm an illustrator and writer from Berlin, Germany. I've been writing and drawing my whole life. I've drawn all kinds of things, all kinds of drawings, some of them even moving. Most of them not. And I've created 3 graphic novels. My first graphic novel, Vakuum, is about a young person disappearing within himself, another one committing an atrocious act. But first and foremost, it's about 2 young people falling in love for the first time, and it's set in this boring suburb and its surrounding forests. My second book, Berenice, although people are not entirely sure how to pronounce this, including me, is a story about an isolated narrator's life inside his room and him slowly dissolving in the digital realms, a sea of late 2010s image boards and anime culture, and him gradually growing obsessed with a cam girl. It's a shorter book and part of a series called Die Unheimlichen, which is what German sounds like. It's kind of harsh sounding language if you're not acquainted with it. It's kind of scary sounding. I would like to say that German is a beautiful language, and I would like to extend my sincerest gratitude to the Goethe-Institut DC for promoting it and its authors in the United States. Unfollow was published in summer of 2020 at the height of some kind of pandemic. It's about Earthboy, written with an I, and his rise to becoming the charismatic face of a global ecological movement, and him becoming a kind of messianic figure. The story is told by his closest followers, so a collective of people that makes it first person plural. According to them, Earthboy is the human manifestation of nature itself. His consciousness is as old as life, and he has witnessed all of evolution. And using this knowledge, which is, way broader than human science and our understanding of nature, he sets out to bring about substantial change in the world. I will say that I was initially going to record this in front of a lush jungle setting, corresponding with the motives of the book, but my bathroom is way too narrow for the filming equipment, so I'm instead recording this in my white room. Anyways, I'm going to read from the second chapter of the book. Earthboy has just appeared at a children's home, seemingly out of nowhere, where he met the narrators voicing his tale. He shared his story and his vision with them, and they helped him break out of the children's home to start his journey. The first 2 weeks he spent hiding in the woods behind the shopping mall. He blended into his surroundings until search efforts for him were suspended. Then he unscrewed the solar panel and broke into the mall's camping and tech sections. He prepared himself for what we refer to as his second voyage, this one leading him deep into the heart of the national park where he set up camp. The moment had come to make contact with the world. Settled in one of the most secluded places, he went online. He set up his accounts and started from scratch. In his first video, he explained how to analyze an environment, how to connect with it by ingesting some of its edible flora, a little of everything. How this method would inspire the body to reveal which nutrients were going to be essential in the long run. He then explained which plants contained said nutrients in which concentration, as well as where those plants could be found and sustainably cultivated. And with this tutorial for a self-sufficient and almost symbiotic existence in nature, he began his life in the forest and sharing it with the world. Already back then, he managed to connect with people through the screen. Whoever stumbled upon his channel would listen to him. 21st Century Gatherer, Sustainable Nature Hacks and Guide to Assisted Evolution turned into his most successful video series, in which he would post most of his content over the next few years. Over time, he became an internet phenomenon, the scruffy-haired boy who claimed to live in the woods, who explained how to forecast and lower one's individual annual carbon footprint and exist more sustainably. A boy scientists would soon call a prodigy. But he also spoke of an ongoing, unprecedented man-made mass extinction, of the impending collapse of most ecosystems, of mankind as a geological force. He showed this force's devastating effects, which reached far into the nature sanctuary, when a flash flood destroyed large areas around the riverbed one summer, and the river itself went completely dry the following year. The first time his content went truly viral was when he launched his stamp meme. Young people all around the world used the hashtag #MoistFuture to post photos of their shriveled, water-soaked hands as a symbol against a world in which landmass was being swallowed by the oceans, because previous generations had been insisting on owning and eating everything, as well as traveling everywhere by plane. Such were the words used by an author covering a story for a renowned online magazine. The feature painted him as the emerging representative of a generation that felt betrayed. His fan base kept expanding over the years. Young people everywhere grew up alongside him and watched him master his life in nature every day. Users on image boards compared screenshots and photographs to determine his location. People were obsessed with him. Whenever he felt that his presence started to even remotely affect the ecosystem or that he was about to be discovered, he simply moved. The national park was huge, and when he eventually felt that he had sufficiently embedded himself in humanity's mind, he left the sanctuary altogether to embark on what we call his third, his big voyage. He slept under a plain sky or wherever he found accommodation, ate what he found or what was given to him. He observed the human way of life. Excuse me. His most successful videos during this period was his farewell series. Whenever he got the chance to visit an endling, the last surviving specimen of an animal species, he would take his time and say goodbye to the animal on camera. Those videos struck a nerve. He posted or streamed live from wherever he was. He observed the world in all its shapes and facets. He wanted to see man's deep imprint on it with his own physical eyes. It was no longer enough to only see through his memories. It was around then that his body started changing visibly. He began to adorn it. He had the names and images of extinct animals eternalized on his skin. Many of his admirers followed suit. He was slowly becoming an icon. 1 year later, he made the top 10 influencers of the year lists of all important magazines. He had made contact with humanity. He fit the times, where most people wanted to save the planet, but nobody really knew where to start. He seemed to know. He seemed to know something nobody else knew. Towards the end of his big voyage, he lived the life of a rock star. Wherever he showed up, people were all over him. Stars invited him to their parties, into their mansions and the Soho houses of this world. Artists received him in their studios. His words inspired paintings, songs, entire concept albums. Those were times of great stimulation and ecstasy for Earthboy. But they were also a test, because there were moments when his human consciousness manifested to a point where he started worrying about losing his real, his prehistoric self. But it was necessary to remain in this human state for as long as possible. It was his method in order to understand humans, what drove them and what made them happy. It made him recognize the first step towards realizing his vision. Sustainably content and internally well-balanced human beings who were aware of the fact that they already had everything they needed. Earthboy had discovered the path he needed to take, but knew that something was missing. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it was waiting for him at the end of his journey. What Earthboy is missing is a person named You. She's also a social media personality and activist. And in terms of a constructive solution to humanity's problems, she's the more significant character in the book. Together they create an app, a kind of meditation app, which almost magically implants a kind of ecological consciousness in its users, while being beneficial to stuff like anxiety and depression, our present-day ailments many of us are acquainted with. And over time, this app creates a wave of change within humans all around the world. The app's user numbers as well as Earthboy's and You's following grow exponentially, and change seems to be in reach. The next passage is about You and Earthboy meeting for the first time, which I'm going to read after a word from our sponsor.
For millions of years, the planet has been in perfect harmony. Species came and went with the natural flow of life. lately, something has been disturbing this flow. One species has been living beyond its means. But what if nature wasn't defenseless? What if it had a voice and a body? What would nature say? What would nature do?
Huh, what an interesting premise. It's also interesting how this video is sponsored by the very book it's about. It's like this weird feedback loop. It's almost like I'm trapped in this wide room, comprised of my own stories and ideas. Anyways, without further ado, here's the next chapter. Yu's programming days dated back comparatively far within her short, intense career, but her skills were undisputed. When she and Earthboy had started following each other, the internet had gone crazy. And when she had posted the screenshot of her DM, it had exploded. It had wanted the two of them to get together. Coding prodigy turned teen CEO, turned pro gamer, turned model, turned organic fashion line designer, turned sustainable lifestyle YouTuber, turned sustainability architect, turned installation artist. It was hard to pin down and define Yu as a public figure, which is probably what made her special. That and the fact that she never forgot about her origins. She had shared a remarkable part of her life with the world, and over the years had become one of the most important influencers in her fields of expertise. People drew similarities between hers and Earthboy's stories, because they both had been born into this world without privilege and had achieved astonishing things despite their circumstances. Because they both wanted to bring about change. Yu's quest for meaning had started early. She knew that her success and the perks of her mainstream career would never fulfill her. The findings of her quest reunited her with her beginnings. Sustainable housing concepts interpreted in room installations. Her actual house was a relic from a different time. It had already been declared for sale. She was about to leave everything behind. The appearance of Earthboy merely confirmed her decision. He would later describe the moment to us when they stood across each other for the first time, and the feeling that grew inside him. How they had just stared at each other until Yu spoke. The internet was right. The two of them merged immediately. He told us that even though he had watched life emerge with all of his senses, he had never felt or witnessed a similar feeling. The two of them fell in love. He knew he had found what he had been missing. Yu was the first human he really spent time with, the first person he shared his everyday life with. In this new biotope, he began his work. Yu introduced him to the basics and helped him with the details once he got a grip of them. His head was like a sponge. Sometimes when she was out of town for a couple of days, she would return to find that he had typed hundreds of pages of code. During this period, he neglected his carbon footprint. It was for a higher goal. He had to keep his body and mind awake for as long as possible in order to achieve it. For months, he programmed, conceptualized, and recorded countless hours of material. During the creative breaks which he forced himself to take, he dampened his body and immersed himself in his memories. For the first time, he succeeded in selectively summoning those that were relevant for his project. His memories of humankind. Because he understood them now. Because he himself was now living through the potentially most essential part of the human experience. Because there was a new scent that enabled him to do so. Yu's scent. The The two of them will proceed to create a kind of community in the rainforest alongside other influencers who, via their channels, amplify their message. And this community becomes this perfect vision of humans coexisting peacefully with nature. There, Earthboy creates all these utopian plants that are, very high yielding, very nutritious, and absorb huge amounts of CO2. They send out the seeds of these plants to followers all around the world, and everywhere similar projects begin to appear. The utopia seems perfect, but there will be an event that gives the whole story a different dimension, which I'm not going to spoil. Instead, I'm going to take some questions from the audience in a minute after these messages.
What if the tables turned and nature got the upper hand? What if it had access to the minds of humans? What would nature do with this kind of power? Does humankind even deserve a second chance?
I mean, I'm sold. That looks great. Are there any questions? Yes, the person who is clearly me wearing a different shirt. Hey, so I was wondering, your book is at least partly about young people taking to social media to oppose climate change, right? Uh-huh. So I was wondering, were you in any way influenced by Fridays for... No, I finished writing the story in 2018, which was way before any of that happened. And I spent all of 2019 drawing it. So if anything, reality is inspired by my story and my ideas, by my very thoughts. Okay. Can I ask another question? Sure. Thanks. So I read your book, really liked it. Was pretty surprised by the ending. And I was wondering, maybe you could explain, what does it all mean, Mr. Jüliger? I was interested in writing this evangelical tale of a cult leader, and I like the idea of a fictional rock star biography. But first and foremost, this is a way of channeling my fear and anger in face of the ongoing climate crisis. It's very emotional and personal. Okay, I'm told we're running out of time. One more question. Yes, the person who is me wearing glasses. So I noticed that you're using a strict color palette of pinks and blues and reds. Yeah, and I was wondering whether there's any kind of symbolic or metaphorical meaning to that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, funny you would ask that. Yes, there's all of these scenes to me are set at dusk or dawn, and to an extent this is supposed to symbolize this very moment we're experiencing, with something monstrous moving our way and us having this tiny time window to act and avert it. It's meant to convey this sense of looming apocalypse that I've felt my whole life. The sense of impending doom.